The silence in the royal palace of the Krillian Empire was deafening. Ambassador Kalen Vance of the Terran Alliance stood tall, his diplomatic armor practical, yet imposing, as he faced Queen Forlag. The magnificent architecture of the palace towered above, cold and authoritative, matching the atmosphere of tension that permeated the room. The Krillian courtiers observed Kalen with curious and contemptuous gazes, awaiting their queen's next move. Queen Forlag, the absolute ruler of the Krillian Empire, reclined on her crystalline throne. Her beauty was otherworldly, skin with a faint silver sheen, eyes of deep violet that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone. But her beauty belied her cruelty, especially toward races she considered inferior, like Terrans. "Ambassador Vance," she said, her melodic voice echoing through the chamber. "Before we begin negotiations for access to our Zithium deposits, I require proof of your loyalty." Kalen remained composed. His mission was critical. Zithium was essential for the struggling Terran colony's survival. But he had expected an ambush of diplomacy, not this. "I must retrieve a luminescent flower from the Forbidden Zone." Kalen repeated, his tone even. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, I am an ambassador of the Terran Alliance. I'm here to negotiate trade, not perform errands." A collective gasp rippled through the court. No one refused Queen Forlag. The queen's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You dare refuse me, Terran?" "I am not refusing to negotiate," Kalen clarified firmly. "I'm refusing to be treated with disrespect. The Terran Alliance will only engage in discussions based on mutual respect." Queen Forlag's face contorted with rage. She rose from her throne, her silvery robes shimmering like liquid metal. "Commander Lyra," she called, her voice sharp as a blade. The crowd parted, and a striking figure strode forward. Commander Lyra, leader of the Queen's Honor Guard, was a vision of alien beauty and lethal grace. Her skin was a metallic blue, her amber eyes alert and fierce, her hair like liquid silver flowing down her back. Her battle armor, intricately crafted, emphasized both protection and mobility. "Yes, my queen," Lyra responded, bowing deeply. Her voice was surprisingly melodious despite its undertone of steel. "This Terran refuses to demonstrate his loyalty," Forlag declared. "He needs to be taught respect. Challenge him to combat in the arena of glory." Lyra's eyes flickered briefly to Kalen, assessing him professionally. "To the death, my queen." "No," Forlag smiled coldly. "I want him humiliated, not killed. I want every ambassador and dignitary to witness the superiority of Krillian warriors over Terran diplomats. Break his pride, not his neck." Lyra nodded, though Kalen thought he detected a hint of reluctance in her posture. Nevertheless, she turned to him, her face now impassive. "Ambassador Vance, I challenge you to combat in the arena of glory, as is my right as commander of the Honor Guard. Do you accept?" Kalen knew refusing would be disastrous for Terran-Krillian relations. His colonies needed that Zithium, and, if he was honest with himself, his military background bristled at the thought of backing down from a fight. "I accept," he said, drawing surprised murmurs from the court. "What are the terms?" "Traditional Krillian energy blades," Lyra replied. "No personal energy shields. The combat ends when one combatant yields." Queen Forlag's smile widened. "Excellent. The duel will take place tomorrow at midday. I suggest you prepare yourself, Ambassador." Commander Lyra has never been defeated. Kalen held the Queen's gaze. "There's a first time for everything, Your Majesty." As he was escorted to his guest quarters, Kalen immediately contacted his superior, Commander Thorn, through secure channels. "They've set you up for public humiliation," Thorn said, his weathered face grim on the holographic display. "Lyra is their best warrior, trained since childhood, augmented with the best Krillian tech. But she's not invincible. Any tactical advice?" Kalen asked, removing his diplomatic armor. "Krillians fight with precision and showmanship. They're used to opponents who fight the same way. You serve on 7 different battlefronts, Kalen. Use that experience. Fight Terran style. Direct, efficient, unpredictable." Kalen nodded, then picked up the practice energy blade left in his quarters. I'll need to get familiar with this weapon. The future of our colonies depends on this, Thorn reminded him. But I trust your abilities. You didn't earn those battle scars collecting wildflowers. After the call ended, Kalen spent hours practicing with the energy blade, recalling his military training. The weapon was beautifully balanced, but designed for Krillian combat forms. He would need to adapt. Meanwhile, in her private chamber, Commander Lyra performed the ritual preparations for combat. She meditated, focusing her mind, then reviewed tactical data on Kalen Vance. His military record was impressive for a Terran, but nothing compared to her decades of training and actual combat. Still, she would not underestimate him. Her loyalty to Queen Forlag demanded nothing less than perfect execution. The Arena of Glory was packed the following day. Thousands of Krillians filled the stands, eager to witness the humiliation of the Terran ambassador. The massive circular arena, with its ornate architecture and advanced energy barriers to protect spectators, sparkled under the light of twin artificial suns. Kalen entered to a chorus of jeers and mockery. He wore a simple combat suit, having declined the ornate Krillian armor offered to him. Practical, not flashy. Queen Forlag sat in her royal box, surrounded by courtiers and visiting dignitaries. Her expression was one of anticipation and certainty, already savoring Kalen's impending defeat. When Lyra entered, the crowd erupted in adulation. She raised her arms in acknowledgement, her battle armor gleaming. She carried 2 energy blades, one for herself and one for Kalen. They met in the center of the arena. Lyra handed Kalen a blade, their eyes meeting briefly. Up close, Kalen could see that her eyes weren't just amber. They had flecks of gold that caught the light. "I take no pleasure in this, Ambassador," she said quietly. "Neither do I, Commander," he replied. The duel began with Lyra launching into a series of lightning-fast attacks. Her movements were fluid, almost dance-like, the energy blade leaving trails of light as it sliced through the air. Kalen parried defensively, focusing on reading her patterns rather than matching her speed. Lyra was magnificent. There was no denying it. Each attack flowed into the next with lethal grace. But Kalen noticed something. There was an artistry to her fighting, a prescribed elegance that, while impressive, was also predictable. He absorbed several minor hits, wincing as the energy blade seared through his suit to leave shallow burns. The crowd roared with each successful strike from Lyra, certain her victory was imminent. But Kalen was learning, adapting. After 10 minutes of combat, he began to counterattack. His style was nothing like the elegant Krillian forms. It was direct, brutal, efficient, combining techniques from multiple battle zones he'd fought in. Lyra found herself forced on the defensive for the first time. A flicker of surprise crossed her face as Kalen pressed forward with unexpected strength and speed. In the royal box, Queen Forlag's smile faded. The duel stretched on, both combatants showing signs of fatigue. Sweat plastered Kalen's hair to his forehead, while Lyra's breathing grew more labored. The crowd, which had been so certain of a quick Krillian victory, had fallen into shocked silence. Then came the turning point. Lyra, perhaps frustrated by Kalen's resilience, attempted a complex maneuver, a spinning attack designed to overwhelm his defenses. For a split second, her balance shifted. Kalen saw his opportunity. Using a grappling technique he'd learned from Centaurian mercenaries, he dodged her attack and, instead of retreating, stepped in closer. He caught her weapon arm, twisting it while simultaneously sweeping her legs from under her. Lyra fell, her energy blade clattering away. Before she could recover, Kalen had his blade at her throat, its energy field humming inches from her skin. The arena fell silent. Lyra lay there, amber eyes wide with shock, the first defeat of her illustrious career. "Yield," Kalen said quietly. Lyra swallowed, the reality of her situation sinking in. "I yield," she said, her voice barely audible. Kalen deactivated his blade and extended a hand to help her up. "You fought with honor and skill, Commander." Lyra ignored his hand, rising on her own, her expression now carefully neutral. But Kalen could see the storm behind her eyes, shock, humiliation, and something else he couldn't quite identify. In the royal box, Queen Fourlag stood, her face darkened with fury. The impossible had happened. Her champion had been defeated by a Terran diplomat. Enough! Fourlag's voice cut through the stunned silence. Commander Lyra, approach. Lyra walked to the royal box and knelt, head bowed. Even from a distance, Kalen could see her shoulders were rigid with tension. You have failed me. Fourlag's voice was ice. You have failed your empire. You have brought shame to the Krillian warriors who came before you. My queen, Silence. Fourlag's voice echoed throughout the arena. You are stripped of your rank, your titles, and your privileges. From this day forward, you are no longer commander of my honor guard. You are no longer worthy of serving me or the Krillian Empire. The crowd murmured in shock. Lyra remained kneeling, her head still bowed, but Kalen could see her hands trembling slightly. But your punishment does not end there. Fourlag continued, a cruel smile forming on her lips. Since you have been conquered by this Terran, you shall be bound to him. You will marry Ambassador Vance, and you will be exiled from the Krillian Empire. Forever. Kalen stepped forward in disbelief. Your Majesty, this is absurd. I came here to negotiate for Zithium, not. You want a negotiations ambassador? Fourlag cut him off. Then here are my terms. You take this failed warrior as your wife, or the Terran Alliance never gets a single gram of Zithium. Make your choice. Kalen looked at Lyra, still kneeling, her face a mask of shock and rage. The implications were enormous for diplomacy, for his mission, for both their lives. I accept, he said finally, knowing Commander Thorn would understand the strategic necessity. But I expect our marriage to be recognized as a formal alliance between our peoples, with all appropriate trade benefits. Fourlag's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. The binding ceremony will take place immediately, and then you will both leave my empire and never return. The binding ceremony was a cold, perfunctory affair conducted right there in a small chamber adjacent to the arena. No vows of love or commitment were exchanged, only legal and symbolic procedures. A small bio-link device was attached to both their wrists, a Krillian marriage band that monitored vital signs and created a formal record of their union. Lyra stood rigid throughout the process, her eyes fixed on a point in the distance, refusing to look at Kalen or anyone else. Kalen maintained his diplomatic composure, though his mind raced with the implications of this unexpected turn of events. After the ceremony, they were escorted, like prisoners, to Kalen's diplomatic vessel. Lyra was permitted only a small pack of personal belongings. Her armor and weapons were confiscated, replaced with simple civilian clothing that seemed to diminish her somehow. Once aboard the ship, Kalen immediately contacted Commander Thorn through secure channels. This is unprecedented, Thorn said, running a hand through his gray hair. A forced marriage to a Krillian elite warrior? Our legal and diplomatic teams are scrambling to understand the implications. What should I do with her? Kalen asked, glancing toward the ship's common area where Lyra sat motionless, staring out the viewport. Bring her to Earth for now, Thorn ordered. We need to examine the legality of Krillian marriage bonds. They're notoriously complex, with biological and legal entanglements we don't fully understand. In the meantime, treat her with respect. She's technically a political refugee now. Understood, Kalen said, ending the transmission. He approached Lyra cautiously. She didn't acknowledge his presence, continuing to stare out at the stars. I know this is not what either of us wanted, he began. Do not speak to me, Lyra said, her voice flat. This is a punishment, nothing more. I do not recognize this marriage, and I will find a way to escape you at the first opportunity. I'm not your jailer, Lyra. I'm as much a victim of Fourlag's manipulation as you are. She turned to face him, her amber eyes burning with intensity. You know nothing of what I've lost today. My honor, my position, my home, everything I've spent a lifetime building. Now I am bound to an alien and cast out from my world. We are not the same, Ambassador. Kalen nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. You're right. But we're stuck together on this ship for now, and it's a small vessel. We'll need to find a way to coexist. The journey back to Earth would take weeks. The cramped confines of the diplomatic vessel created an atmosphere of tension and forced proximity that neither of them could escape. Initially, they orbited each other like wary planets, speaking only when absolutely necessary. Kalen maintained his routine, reorganizing the ship's supplies, planning reports, and adjusting their flight path. Lyra sat for hours in meditation or stared out at the stars, her shoulders rigid, her face revealing nothing of her thoughts. The first crack in their silence came 3 days into the journey when a minor malfunction in the environmental system required attention. Kalen struggled with an unfamiliar circuit board, and Lyra, watching him fumble, finally spoke. "You're connecting it incorrectly," she said, rising from her seat. "That's a Krillium manufacture component. It requires a different sequence." She moved beside him, her fingers deftly rearranging the connections. The system hummed back to life immediately. "Thank you," Kalen said, genuinely grateful. Lyra nodded curtly and returned to her seat. But a tiny barrier had been breached. Over the following days, brief, stilted conversations began. Kalen asked about Krillian culture beyond what Terran intelligence knew. Lyra, initially reluctant, eventually shared small details: their calendar system, the significance of certain colors in their society, their approach to education. In turn, she began to ask questions about Earth and the Terran Alliance. Her questions were precise, almost tactical in nature, but Kalen detected genuine curiosity beneath her reserved exterior. "Your species achieved space travel remarkably quickly," she observed over a shared meal of rehydrated Terran rations. "Most races take at least twice as long to progress from basic flight to interstellar travel." "Necessity is a powerful motivator," Kalen replied. "Our planet was running out of resources. We had to leave or die." Lyra considered this. Krillians expanded because of ambition, not necessity. Perhaps that is why we conquer rather than cooperate. It was the closest she had come to criticizing her own people, and Kalen noted the shift. Their fragile routine was shattered when they passed through the chaotic Nix Nebula. The ship's sensors detected multiple vessels appearing suddenly from behind a dense dust cloud, sleek, aggressive craft with weapons charged. "Pirates?" Lyra asked, immediately alert, warrior instincts surfacing. Kalen checked the tactical display. "Two, well organized for pirates. And their weapons' signature." He frowned. "It's Krillian technology." They exchanged a look of realization. This was no random encounter. "Forelag," Lyra whispered, a rare flash of fear crossing her face. The first blast rocked the ship before Kalen could respond. He scrambled to the controls, engaging evasive maneuvers as another shot grazed their port side. "They're trying to disable our engines," he shouted over the blaring alarms. Lyra was already at the weapons console. "Your diplomatic vessel has defensive capabilities?" "Limited ones," Kalen replied, executing a sharp turn to avoid incoming fire. "Enough to discourage pirates, not to fight a battle." Lyra's fingers flew over the controls, activating the ship's shield matrix and targeting systems. "I'll maximize what we have. You focus on evasion patterns." What followed was a desperate space battle against overwhelming odds. Kalen piloted with every trick he'd learned in both military service and diplomatic emergencies, while Lyra coordinated their defenses with the precision of an elite commander. They worked together instinctively, calling out warnings and opportunities to each other, their earlier antagonism forgotten in the face of a common enemy. "Port thrusters failing," Kalen reported as another blast hit them. "We've lost 30% of our shield capacity." Lyra targeted a pursuing vessel with a carefully timed energy pulse, temporarily disabling its navigation systems. "We can't defeat them all. We need an escape vector." Kalen's eyes scanned the navigational display, searching for options. There, he pointed to a small moon appearing on their long-range sensors. "Xylos Prime. It's a commercial outpost, technically neutral territory. If we can reach it, their treaties would prevent direct military action, Lyra finished his thought. But we'll need to lose them first. Kalen grinned, despite the dire situation. Hold tight, Commander. I'm going to try something unorthodox. He directed their damaged vessel straight into the densest part of the nebula, where gas clouds and space debris created a dangerous but effective cover. The pursuing vessels hesitated, then followed cautiously. When I give the signal, Kalen instructed, discharge all remaining power from the shields into a reverse burst. It will create an electromagnetic pulse that should confuse their sensors temporarily. Lyra nodded, understanding immediately, and mask our descent to Xylos Prime. Clever, Ambassador. When they reached a particularly dense cloud formation, Kalen gave the command. Lyra executed the shield discharge perfectly, creating a stunning burst of energy that blinded their pursuers' sensors for precious minutes. They broke free from the nebula and pushed their damaged engines to the limit, heading straight for Xylos Prime. The pursuing vessels, momentarily confused, lost their trail just long enough for Kalen and Lyra to enter the moon's atmosphere. But their victory was short-lived. The ship, badly damaged from the attack, struggled to maintain a controlled descent. Warning systems blared as they plummeted toward the surface. Brace for impact, Kalen shouted, fighting with the controls. The crash landing was violent. The ship skidded across a barren plateau, tearing through rock and soil before coming to a smoking stop at the edge of Xylos Prime's sprawling commercial district. When the dust settled, Kalen regained consciousness to find Lyra leaning over him, a cut above her eye bleeding down her face. "Are you injured?" she asked, her tone professional but with an undercurrent of concern. Kalen assessed himself. Bruised ribs, possibly a mild concussion. Nothing critical. Similar condition, she replied, helping him to his feet. But we have a more pressing problem. The ship is beyond repair with our current resources and long-range communications are offline. They surveyed the wreckage together. The diplomatic vessel that had been their home was now a twisted mass of metal and circuitry, unlikely to fly again without extensive repairs. "We're stranded," Kalen said, looking toward the chaotic sprawl of Xylos Prime's main settlement in the distance. "And whoever sent those ships may still be looking for us." Lyra's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we must survive long enough to find another way off this moon and contact your alliance." They looked at each other, two former enemies now facing a common threat. "Truce!" Kalen extended his hand, a very Terran gesture. Lyra hesitated, then clasped his forearm in the Krillian warrior's grip. "Truce!" Xylos Prime was everything its reputation suggested. A vast, chaotic marketplace spanning multiple levels, where species from across the galaxy traded goods, information, and services of varying legality. The air was thick with exotic smells, the sounds of countless languages, and the constant hum of machinery and commerce. Kalen and Lyra moved through this sensory assault cautiously. They had salvaged what they could from a ship, some credits, emergency supplies, and a few tools. Their most valuable asset, however, was each other. Kalen's diplomatic skills proved essential in navigating the complex social web of Xylos Prime. He negotiated for basic supplies, temporary lodging in a cramped room above a repair shop, and discreet inquiries about ship parts and communication options. Lyra, meanwhile, kept them safe. Her warrior's instincts detected potential threats before they materialized. Twice, she steered them away from ambushes set by opportunistic predators drawn to obvious offworlders. Once, she dispatched 3 would-be robbers with such efficient brutality that word quickly spread to leave the strange couple alone. Their forced proximity in the small rented room created awkward moments. There was only one narrow bed, which Kalen insisted Lyra take while he made do with a makeshift pallet on the floor. They established careful routines for privacy, speaking little during these domestic arrangements. But their shared meals became opportunities for conversation. Slowly, reluctantly, they began to learn about each other as people, not just as representatives of their respective worlds. "You were raised in the military from childhood?" Kalen asked one evening as they shared a meal of local street food, spicy, unidentifiable proteins wrapped in blue-grain flatbread. Lyra nodded. I was identified at age 5 for exceptional physical and mental attributes. My parents considered it a great honor when I was selected for the Honor Guard training program. Did you ever see your family again? Something flickered across Lyra's face, an old pain, quickly suppressed. Once yearly, for a standardized visitation period, until they died in a colony uprising when I was 15. I'm sorry, Kalen said quietly. Lyra shrugged. The Queen became my family. The Honor Guard became my home. Until now. The bitterness in her voice was palpable. And you? She asked, clearly wanting to change the subject. Your combat skills are not those of a mere diplomat. Kalen smiled wryly. I served in the Terran Defense Force for 12 years before diplomatic service. Fought in 7 different conflict zones. I found I was better at preventing wars than fighting them. Yet you defeated me, Lyra observed, not with resentment, but with genuine curiosity. Not because I'm a better warrior, Kalen replied honestly, but because I've had to adapt to more fighting styles. Krillian combat forms are beautiful and effective, but they follow patterns. Predictable to someone who's fought across the galaxy. Lyra considered this. Perhaps that is why Forlag fears the Terran Alliance despite her contempt. You adapt. Krillian's perfect. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Kalen peered through the grimy window to see a group of heavily armed mercenaries questioning locals, showing holographic images. They're looking for us, he said grimly. Lyra joined him at the window, her shoulder brushing against his. Vrakian mercenaries. Elite trackers. Forlag spared no expense. Why is she so determined to kill us? Kalen wondered. This goes beyond simple revenge for wounded pride. Lyra was silent for a long moment. I believe I know why, she finally said. But we need access to a secure communication network to confirm my suspicion. The next day, they ventured deeper into Xylos Prime's underbelly. Using the last of their credits, they bribed their way into a data broker's establishment, a cramped, cluttered space filled with terminals and holographic displays. 10 minutes, the data broker, a 6-limbed insectoid, chittered. No trace protocols active. Whatever you access, I never saw. Lyra's fingers flew across the interface, breaking through. Security barriers with surprising skill. You're quite adept at information warfare, Kalen observed. All Honor Guard commanders are trained in all forms of combat, she replied without looking up, including digital. She accessed a restricted Krillian military channel, downloading files at rapid speed. Just as the data transfer completed, an alarm sounded. We've been detected, Lyra said, snatching the data chip. We need to leave. Now. They fled the data broker's shop moments before Vrakian mercenaries stormed it. Racing through back alleys and crowded marketplaces, they eventually lost their pursuers in a massive warehouse district. Hidden behind cargo containers, breathing heavily, they found themselves pressed close together in the narrow space. For a moment, neither moved away. Kalen became acutely aware of Lyra's proximity, the faint metallic scent of her skin, the amber of her eyes catching the dim light. The moment passed when distant shouts reminded them of the danger. They found an abandoned maintenance shed to examine the stolen data. Look at this, Lyra said, projecting the files from a portable device. The data revealed communications between Queen Forlag and an unknown entity, discussing a preemptive strike against the Terran Alliance's main Zithium processing facility. She was never going to negotiate fairly, Kalen realized. This whole diplomatic mission was a distraction while she prepared for war. Yes, Lyra confirmed. But there's more. She highlighted another section of data. The attack was scheduled to coincide with my replacement as Honor Guard commander. My second-in-command, Vex, is completely loyal to Forlag and unquestioning. I have been asking too many questions about troop movements. She was going to remove you anyway, Kalen said, understanding dawning. My victory in the arena just gave her a convenient opportunity. Lyra nodded. And now she wants us both dead because we know too much. If this information reached the Terran Alliance, They could prepare defenses and expose Forlag's deception to other galactic powers, Kalen finished. We need to get this information to Commander Thorne immediately. Over the next several days, they worked together to repair a salvaged long-range communicator. Kalen traded his diplomatic skills for parts while Lyra engineered a makeshift transmitter powerful enough to reach Terran space. As they worked side by side, the last barriers between them began to fall. Lyra shared stories of her life in the Honor Guard, not just the triumphs but the doubts she had carefully hidden for years. Kalen spoke of his childhood on a struggling colony world, his military service, and his hopes for lasting peace. Their pretense of being a married couple to avoid attention gradually felt less like a charade. When local merchants referred to them as mates, neither corrected them anymore. When it had to hold hands or stand close to maintain their cover, the initial awkwardness faded. One night, after a particularly close call with mercenaries, they returned to their small room, shaking with adrenaline and relief. Without thinking, Kalen pulled Lyra into an embrace. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. "I thought they had you when we got separated in the market," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "As did I," she admitted, her body gradually relaxing against his. It was unsettling. When they finally moved apart, something had changed between them. That night, they talked for hours, no longer as reluctant allies, but as two people who had come to care deeply for each other against all odds. The next morning, they finally completed the communicator. With bated breath, they sent their message, the data about Forlag's planned attack and a request for extraction, to Commander Thorne. The response came faster than expected. A burst transmission confirmed receipt of their message and announced that a Terran stealth vessel was already en route to Xylos Prime, due to arrive within 2 planetary rotations. "We just need to stay hidden for 2 more days," Kalen said, relief evident in his voice. But their message had not gone unnoticed. That evening, as they returned from securing supplies, they found their lodging surrounded by Vrakian mercenaries and what appeared to be Krillian special forces. "They found us," Lyra whispered, pulling Kalen into the shadows of an adjacent alley. "And they've brought a full extraction team." "How many?" "At least 20. Too many to fight directly." They retreated deeper into the market district, formulating a plan. They would need to reach the designated extraction point, an abandoned landing pad in the industrial sector, without being captured or killed. As night fell on Xylos Prime, they made their move. Using the chaotic environment to their advantage, they created diversions, set false trails, and carefully made their way toward the extraction point. But halfway there, disaster struck. A hidden sniper's shot grazed Lyra's leg, causing her to stumble. The momentary delay was enough for their pursuers to close in. "Go," Lyra urged, pushing Kalen forward as she drew a borrowed blade. "Get the information to your people." Instead, Kalen lifted her, supporting her weight. "We started this together. We finish it together." What followed was a desperate running battle through the industrial zone of Xylos Prime. Back to back, they fought off waves of attackers. Kalen with brutal efficiency, Lyra with deadly grace despite her injury. They protected each other instinctively, anticipating movements, covering weaknesses, fighting as a seamless unit. They reached the extraction point bloodied but alive, only to find it surrounded by enemy forces. Pinned down behind cargo containers, running out of options, Kalen looked at Lyra. "Whatever happens," he said, "I'm glad I lost to you in that arena." Lyra's amber eyes softened. "And I'm glad I lost to you, Kalen Vance." Before he could respond, the night sky erupted with weapons fire. A Terran stealth vessel decloaked directly above them, its precision strikes scattering the mercenaries. A gravitational lift deployed from its underside. "Run!" Kalen shouted, helping Lyra toward the extraction point. They sprinted through chaos and weapons fire, reaching the gravitational lift just as the mercenaries regrouped for a final assault. The lift activated, pulling them upward to safety as the ship's defenses kept their pursuers at bay. Inside the Terran vessel, medical personnel immediately attended to their injuries. Commander Thorne himself was waiting in the medical bay, his weathered face showing both relief and concern. You two have caused quite the diplomatic incident, he said, though his tone was light, and potentially prevented an interstellar war. Kalen, being treated for multiple lacerations and a dislocated shoulder, nodded toward Lyra. It was her information that made the difference. She betrayed everything she knew to warn us. Lyra, lying on an adjacent medical bed as her leg wound was treated, seemed uncomfortable with the praise. I merely did what honor required, once I knew the truth. Thorne studied her thoughtfully. The Alliance owes you a debt, Commander Lyra. Though I understand that title has been revoked. I am no longer Krillian, she said, her voice steady despite the pain evident in her eyes. I have no title, no rank, no home. That remains to be seen. Thorne replied cryptically. For now, rest. Both of you. We'll sort out the details when we reach Earth. In the following weeks, events unfolded rapidly. The Terran Alliance, armed with Lyra's intelligence, thwarted Forlag's planned attack. Diplomatic channels buzzed with accusations and counter-accusations. Several Krillian colony worlds, long discontent with Forlag's aggressive policies, used the opportunity to declare independence. Lyra was granted political asylum on Earth. Her knowledge of Krillian military tactics and technology made her an invaluable consultant to the Terran Defense Force. She adapted to Earth's environment and customs with the same determination she had brought to everything in her life. Kalen, after debriefing and recovery, was offered a prestigious diplomatic posting. He requested a temporary leave of absence instead. 3 months after their escape from Xylos Prime, Kalen found Lyra on a quiet beach near his family's home in New Zealand. She stood at the water's edge, watching the sunset paint the ocean in gold and crimson. Her silver-blue hair, longer now, moved in the sea breeze. The Alliance would still like to formalize your consultant position, he said as he joined her. Full citizenship included. Lyra nodded, still gazing at the horizon. I spoke with your legal experts today about our marriage. Kalen's heart rate increased. What did they say? That under Terran law, a marriage performed under duress has no legal standing. The biolink bands we wear are merely symbolic now, with no legal power. She turned to face him. We are not obligated to remain together. Kalen studied her face, searching for what she truly wanted. Is that what you prefer? To annul our forced union? I don't know, Lyra admitted, her usual certainty absent. For so long, my life was defined by duty, by service to the Queen and Empire. Then it was defined by exile, by being bound to you. She touched the biolink band on her wrist. Now I must define myself. You don't have to decide everything right away, Kalen said gently. Earth can be your home for as long as you want. And he hesitated, then continued, I can be in your life however you want me to be. Lyra turned to face him fully, her amber eyes reflecting the sunset. When we were on Xylos Prime, fighting together, surviving together, it was the first time I felt truly seen. Not as a warrior, not as a symbol of Krillian might, but as myself. I felt the same, Kalen admitted. Strange how a punishment turned into the most honest relationship I've ever had. A small smile, rare and precious, curved Lyra's lips. Perhaps that is Forlag's final defeat. She meant to humiliate us both, but instead, she gave us each other, Kalen finished, reaching for her hand. Lyra's fingers intertwined with his, her touch no longer hesitant. I still don't know what the future holds, Kalen Vance, but I would like to discover it. With you. The biolink bands on their wrists glowed softly in the fading light, not as symbols of punishment anymore, but as reminders of an unexpected journey. Behind them, Earth stretched vast and welcoming. Before them, the universe with all its dangers and wonders. And between them, something neither had expected to find. A bond forged in adversity, tempered by understanding and transformed by choice. Together, then, Kalen said, drawing her closer. Lyra nodded, leaning into him as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Together,